City Matters.
Hello and thank you for joining me today. I'm your host, Richard Acritelli, and on today's episode of The Fog of War and Humanity on HMTV, my special guest, retired Chief Master Sergeant and Suffolk County Police Officer Jack Brehm, will join me for a conversation about his 2 decades of service in military uniform at the New York Air National Guard 106 Rescue Wing and as a police officer. Jack, here we go. Let's get started. Can you describe your childhood, where you grew up, what school you went to, and your interests as a kid?
Oh, sure. I grew up originally in New Hyde Park until I was 10 years old. Then I moved out to Shoreham, Long Island, New York. And I went to Port Jefferson High School because there were no high schools in between, so we were bused quite a distance to high school. Then after high school, I went to Suffolk Community College for 2 years. I took marine biology. And after 2 years, I found out there were no jobs in marine biology. So I was kind of in that limbo status. I was working, cutting grass for the Teamsters Union. And
Where was that you were cutting grass?
that was at Leisure Village.
Okay, where is that, in
It's
Shoreham?
in Shoreham also.
And as a
Or
kid,
Ridge.
was there any sports or anything that you liked to do as a kid? Anything for Port Jeff High School?
I did very limited with the high school because we were so far geographically from my high school. I did track and I did cross country with the school, but I wasn't a fanatic for any of that. I was very small, too small for football. And most of the things I did in my time, I did in my own time. I became a scuba diver when I was 15 years old. I took the NAUI course.
Where did you do that?
I did that at there were 2 neighbors of ours actually in the neighborhood who did it. They were school teachers, and on the side they taught scuba diving. So I did it through them. And then at like age 16, I decided I wanted to skydive. So I went to New Jersey and got a couple of jumps skydiving. So I was very active and very outdoorsy. But as far as high school, not a lot of sports.
But you had a lot of energy. And,
Oh, yeah.
And a will to try new things, right?
I always knew, that's why I took marine biology, that I wanted to do something outdoors for a living. I didn't want to sit in an office.
Okay.
I wanted to be scuba diving or doing whatever.
All right, so now you graduate college, you're cutting the grass at Leisure Village. Was your dad pleased with this course of action by you?
Well, no, he offered me 4 years of school, and when he said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "Marine biology seems to be a dead end for me, so I really have no idea." He said, "Well, then I'm not paying for school." So that's when I got the job cutting grass and carrying fertilizer at Agway and doing menial jobs. And my father was a retired Master Chief from the Navy. He was a CB for 25 years. He was a World War II vet. At 17, he was on a destroyer escort. And he didn't like my lifestyle. I mean,
Discipline, no nonsense, hardworking, right?
oh, yeah.
Right.
My father was an electrician, foreman at Brookhaven National Laboratory. But he stayed in the reserves for over 36 years as a CB.
Where did he serve? Was it local? Was it in the city? Was it somewhere around here?
Whitestone
Whitestone,
was
okay.
the reserve center for the Navy. And he would do his 2 weeks a year, so I always saw him in uniform, and but he was a Navy man. He was a military man, and he was fed up with the fact that we lived 2 different lifestyles. I was sleep half the day, and I was out until the wee hours in the morning. When he'd get up for work, I was just coming home. So one day I woke up, and there was an article ripped out of the newspaper, Long Island Newsday. It said, "Jump to save lives," and it was a picture of a guy free-fall parachuting with a medical kit on. And he said, there was a note next to it, "Check this out today." And when my father, he didn't fool around.
You knew he was serious, right?
I knew he was serious. I didn't know what it was. It just said NYANG in the corner of the article, which I didn't know meant New York Air National Guard. So I saw a guy skydiving, and I said, well, when he comes home tonight, I better have an answer for him. So I drove out to the address, and I was shocked to find a fence a military gate guard, a fighter plane at the gate. And
what year was that?
1977.
1977.
Yeah, probably around June or July 1977.
So you're driving out there. You know you have to now kind of produce for your father now a little bit, right? What were your first thoughts when you went into the 106 Air National Guard base?
Well, at first I thought, this is not for me. This is the military. I didn't perceive that from the article at all. But I went in and I said to somebody, I'm looking for this job. They parachute, mountain climb, and scuba dive. The guy says, oh, you want to see Chief McManus? So somebody walked me down to an office, and I met this chief, Vietnam vet. He's in a flight suit with a maroon beret in his pocket. And he's telling me you're going to parachute, mountain climb, scuba dive, travel the world, and you're going to be a medic. And then everything went blank. All I saw was that flight suit and the beret in his pocket. And I said, I'm in. So he directed me up to a recruiter. And the recruiter told me that there's a 90% washout rate in this career field. And you really should do some homework before you come in and sign up. And I said, I know enough. I want to parachute, mountain climb, and scuba dive and travel the world for a living. So I signed up and came home, and my debrief to my father was very short. I enlisted today. And he was shocked.
Was he pleased? Was he?
Oh, I think he was set back. He was not expecting that. He was expecting probably what he'd been hearing from me for years is a lot of rhetoric and BS. And I went there.
Yeah, I'll get to it. And
right? I'm going to go back someday. But I think he was a little put off that I'm in.
Okay. Well, you did what he wanted. You got a little direction, right? A new course, right? And so now, where does this course take you? Where's the first place that you go to?
It was over a year pipeline. They call it the pipeline because you go from school to school to school at the time. Now this school is well over 2 years. Most guys take about 3 years to accomplish the course. But it began at Lackland Air Force Base for basic training. Then you stayed at Lackland and you went through what they call the OLJ now, or the OLJ then is now called Indoctrination. And that's kind of like Bud School for the Navy SEALs. It's you get up in the morning and you run, you swim in the afternoon, and then you do calisthenics until the wee hours of the evening, and it just gets harder and harder and harder. On day one, we started with 80 recruits, and they told us at the end of the 8 weeks that we were going to graduate no more than 8. Wow. So that was going to be a 90% washout rate from the get-go. They told us up front, whether it's true or not, they said they only had 8 spots to scuba school and jump school, and there wasn't going to be a criteria where you passed or failed. It was just going to get harder and harder and harder until they had 8 or less.
Now, did you say to yourself, what the heck did I do here? Did I make the wrong decision? Or were you just straight as an arrow? You knew this was what you wanted to do. You were motivated. You had that in you, right? Obviously, right?
Yeah, but I also maintain the attitude of ignorance is bliss. And I was a one-day-at-a-time guy. I tried not to look at the big picture. I didn't try and look at what the final evals were going to be like 8 weeks or 9 weeks from then. I wanted to know, what do I have to do today? And we actually had guys that used to sneak down to the sergeant's desk at night and come up with reports on, tomorrow we're going to be doing this, this, and this, because that's what we saw. I didn't want any part of that.
Just get through the day. Right?
Get through the day. I wanted to sleep sound, and I'll worry about tomorrow.
Did you tell future recruits, right, airmen that were going through this for the PJs, did you tell them that years later as you became older?
Yeah, I told them that was just my philosophy, but everybody works differently. Some guys needed to know what they were doing the next day. They wanted to mentally prepare, and whatever works for you. I was fortunate. I had a roommate named Bill Skolnick. He was an ex-Marine, and he used to stand, look in the mirror at night, hum the Marine Corps hymn, and make his pecs dance to it. And I said, I have no chance. This is my roommate. But he turned to me one day and he goes, well, those 6 other guys are going to have to fight for those slots, aren't they? I said, 6 other guys? He said 8. He goes, well, it's me and you and whatever 6 other guys can make it.
It was a sense of confidence.
It was just, if this guy thinks I can make it, maybe I got a shot.
Did your body type help you a little bit?
Yes, that's a good question. Everybody thinks, you're going to special operations. You're going to be that Navy SEAL, an Army Ranger, a Green Beret, that you got to be a beast. Big guys don't make it.
Carrying a little too much weight, too much muscle, and if they played physical sports, they're banged up as well. And
it's an all-round thing. Like I said, you get up and say you're running at the end, you're running 12, 14 miles, right? A lean guy runs better. The gazelle runs the best.
Yeah, sure.
In the pool, it's not the big, strong, muscle-bound guy that makes it through the pool. It's the long, lanky guy that can pull his own weight and then move in the water. And then in calisthenics, who can do 30 pull-ups? It was me at 150 pounds, 155 pounds.
Yeah.
If you're lifting up thighs that weigh 30 pounds each, you're at a disadvantage.
Did you lose a lot of weight just from constantly burning and doing calisthenics and moving? And
some guys dropped 20, 30 pounds going through. I gained 15, 20 pounds because I went in such a string bean. I went 135. I graduated 155. I thought I was a beast.
Did they give you extra food to eat or anything like that? Or
the deal was you can eat all you can eat. We were one of the few guys in the chow hall, and we went in. We sat in a separate area, and it was go back as many times as you wanted and consume as many calories as you could.
Now, at this training, what was it like to do the training in the water? Can you describe what it was like to be in the pools and working with other recruits and kind of the severity of some of the training and your own instructors?
Well, everything got harder and harder. Like I said, we started out probably with 3-mile runs, and then you would do a 4-mile run carrying either railroad iron or a telephone pole or just running with a rope to show unity. Till the end when you were running 14, 15-mile fartlicks and you're doing sprints in between. So that got harder and harder. The calisthenics went from an hour in what they call the dungeon down to 4 or 5 hours in the evening, and you never knew when it was going to be over. But as the instructors told us, there's only one place we can run you till you can't run anymore. We can make you do push-ups so you can't get your face out of the dirt. There's only one place we can put you in fear of your life, and that's where we find out who you are, and that's in the pool. And then they had drown-proofing scenarios, but they had water harassment, which was violent.
The fact that you learned how to scuba dive and you liked being in the water, and heck, you're a Long Island kid, with a bunch of Midwestern guys and Southern and Western guys, you were around the water. Did that help you out at all?
There is no doubt. The fact that I grew up in the Long Island Sound, I've been swimming since I was a kid. I've been a scuba diver, and I was comfortable in the water, and I was never the fastest swimmer. But if they said,
and you learned about it
swim
too.
4 miles, I said, okay.
Yeah, and you learned it. You went to school for part of that also. You were interested in that.
So, that helped me tremendously.
Now, you worked with like snorkels with buddies and stuff. Could you explain what kind of training was that and like the purpose of that training?
The water harassment portion was they would give you and your teammate, one snorkel. You would have to hold on to each other with all your might and hold that snorkel for dear life because it was life. Neither one of you could breathe at the surface without the snorkel. It was only breathing through that one snorkel. So the idea was you take 2 breaths, you give it to your partner, he takes 2 breaths, and it builds a trust and a bond that I'm not taking 4 breaths. I'm going to take my quick 2, and you're going to get your quick 2, and you're going to pass it back to me. But then they slowly add, the instructor comes in the water with you and starts doing everything he can do to prevent you from accomplishing that. He tries to, number one, separate you. If he's successful in separating the 2 of you, one of you drowns. And it's an immediate failure if somebody comes up and takes a breath by just breathing without the snorkel. So this scenario that has to go on for 3 to 5 minutes, you're being shoved under the water, punched, kicked, pushed, water. When you do finally get the snorkel, he slaps a handful of water into it so you aspirate a little bit of water with your air. Then you start choking, which is a nightmare. But with everything you have to stay attached to that other partner. You can't let him separate you. You can't let him remove the snorkel from your hands. And you have to trust your partner that they're going to take the minimum breath and then get it back to you. Because
was there a name that was given for this training? What was the name or nickname?
Well,
for it?
The training itself didn't have it, but I don't know if we named it or the instructor named it. But if you pass out under the water, that wasn't a failure because you did not break. You did not come up and take your breath. you would rather pass out than come up. So you were taken out of the pool. You were given 3 or 5 minutes to recuperate, get your wits back about you, and then it was back in the pool. But we would call that visiting the wizard. When you went to that place where you felt you were losing muscle control, you felt tingling throughout the body, you start seeing white flashes of light in your eyes, and then the next thing you know, you're out of the pool, sitting on the side, somebody slapping you in the face and saying, all right, you got 5 minutes, get your stuff together, and you're back in the pool. So that was.
So you didn't want to visit the wizard. You wanted to, right?
No, but they pretty much brought everybody to that phase because they wanted to see your reaction. Were you going to break from the group, push away the instructor, and come up and get air? Or were you willing to stay down there and say, hey,
handle that stress?
If you take me to that point, I'm willing to go there.
Okay. Now, you graduate from this phase of training. Where do they send you after this?
Then you enter what they call the pipeline, and that is you went to Fort Benning, Georgia, to Army Jump School, which is the old-fashioned static line parachute jump school. That's the old John Wayne hook up, shuffle to the door, jump out, yell Geronimo, and you're basically a dandelion. You're floating in the air.
Now, before the service, how many jumps did you make?
I'd only made 4 jumps.
Did that help you for the military?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
so there are some similarities then, right? So,
yeah, I had the fear of standing up. It's an unnatural act to jump out of an airplane.
A perfectly good plane. Right?
Yeah, well, they open the door, you hear that wind rush, and somebody tells you, now go there and jump out. Just that's not a natural action. So I had overcome that a couple of times. So I was prepared.
How many jumps did you have to make?
In jump school to get qualified, you only have to make 5 jumps, 4 day jumps and 1 night jump.
Now, by the time you retired, how many jumps did you make?
I had about 3,000 jumps, but 1,500 of them were probably free fall deployments, and 500 of them was static line jumps.
And that's roughly from what, 1977 to about 2003?
Correct.
Wow. So that's something that you did over and over and that you knew inside and out. That was part of your job, your training, and kind of your way of life too. So
yeah, people would ask the question, after 1,000 jumps, are you still scared when you stand on the ramp, the C-130 to jump out? And the word isn't scared. No, if you're scared, you've lost control. Are you apprehensive? Absolutely, because every jump is different. It's either a night jump, a day jump, a tree jump, a water jump, an equipment jump with weapons, med kits, scuba tanks on. You're jumping in all different conditions, all different weather, all different groups of people. Sometimes it's just you. Sometimes it's a group of 2, 3, 5, 6. So every jump is unique, and you have to play it through in your head before you go. And right until you exit that airplane, you are going through that dry scenario in your head. Jump, look, clear, pull, check altimeter, check your teammates, link up, get a heading. And yeah.
Now, did you have any instructors that were, very well versed? 1977, so you must have had some guys that were in Vietnam or Korea, or even some older guys from World War II, right, at Benning?
At Fort Benning, I don't know. You didn't get to know the black hats. They were the Army instructors, and you didn't know them personally at all. They just yelled and screamed and made sure you followed Army regiment.
But I'm sure some of those guys had some experience behind.
Oh, there's no doubt.
Some of those yells, right? So
all the pararescue instructors I had, I think every single one of them was a Vietnam vet, and they were highly decorated, highly motivated, and guys who stayed in and now wanted to teach the next generation.
And their experience is very relative to what you're doing also.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, so now you get through Benning. Where do you go after that?
After Fort Benning, we went down to jump school, which Special Forces Scuba School in Key West, Florida. And that, I believe, was 6-week training program of scuba diving. And a lot of that was underwater navigation. It was ship clearing, looking for explosives, mines that were placed on ships. A lot of it was being taken out. Now, this was in Key West, so they'd take you out a mile and a half. They'd give you 5 seconds to look at a target on the beach. They'd give you a strobe light on the beach. You had to set your compass on that target, deploy into the water, immediately go right to the bottom. You were always tied to a teammate. And then you would fin hard, meester was the call, to fin hard, follow that compass, And then you would come out on the beach a mile, mile and a half inland, and somebody would measure you with a tape measure how far off you were from the strobe light. So how good you could navigate underwater, whether you 10 feet, 50 feet, 100 yards, 500 yards off course.
And that's just an intense form of training as well, right?
And that came with also its underwater harassment, where someone would come up and attack you underwater, knock your mask off, rip the regulator out of your mouth, turn your air off, literally rip everything off you and put it on the bottom of the pool. And then you had to surface, get a couple of breaths of air. It's called ditching and donning. And you go back down and re-don your equipment on a single breath. So the first thing you would do, of course, find your regulator, turn on your air source, take a couple of breaths, and then slowly put your equipment back on. And then you would be taken out of the pool, and they'd check and make sure every strap was right. Everything was on perfect.
Now, again, your comfort with the water must have helped you with that, right? That must have been
absolutely
something that you could fall back on.
Well, I'd been through Scuba already. I had some pretty good instructors in the civilian world, and they pretty much taught me ditching and donning prior to that. So I had a huge advantage in that area.
All right, so now you leave the water. Where do you go now?
From then we went to Fairchild Air Force Base in Washington State, and there first you go through survival school, where they put you in the woods. They give you some.
What's the name of that school? That they'll call
it's a SERE school.
SERE school, right?
Yeah.
So
survive, escape, resist, and evade. Yeah.
Just the name alone is no nonsense, right? It's
well, this is it. You're shot down behind enemy territory. You need to survive. You need to escape the enemy. You need to resist. If you get captured, you need to resist, and you need to evade prior to that.
Now, where were you? Were you in the mountains? Were you? Was there water there?
No. You're in the dense forest of Washington State. It's all mountains.
And what did you do to survive? What did you eat?
Well, beforehand they give you classes, and you're taught, what foliage you can eat, what fauna's out there, and what animals you can capture and kill and are edible, and rough way to how to prepare these foods. And we went out, and I just decided day one, I said, I'm going to eat everything I possibly can, whether it's a slug, a turtle, a snake, ants, and I'm going to try not to lose weight. Well, that's impossible, but
sure. Now, was there any one of those things that you said, well, this isn't half bad. This isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be? I mean, you're not eating a steak off the grill somewhere, but
Nope, but the old saying that it tastes like chicken is a fact.
Yeah.
Whether it was a squirrel, it was turtle, a snake, you peel the meat, you cook it, you boil it, it all tastes the same. It all tasted like chicken, and it was fine. The one lesson I learned more than anything that sticks with me 40 years later is I found a gigantic 4-inch grasshopper, and we all tried to gross each other out. Yeah. One guy bit off the head of a snapping turtle, spun it around until he spit the head out. We had guys eating snakes raw. I said, here's my thing. I'm going to take this 4-inch, grasshopper. I put it in my mouth. And what does a grasshopper do? Just the same thing as a cricket when you throw in the light in the garage. It runs for the darkest spot it can find.
Sure, yeah.
I didn't get to bite it, chew it. It ran down my throat, got probably 4 or 5 inches down, and then just lodged itself. And those back legs on a grasshopper are very powerful. And I couldn't swallow enough. I couldn't drink enough. I couldn't cough enough. It had to be 5 minutes. It lived in there, and it let me know that it was alive.
Yeah. I mean, that's an unbelievable story. And, you start getting a little bit tougher. You start getting used to more of the elements. And the fact that this is now part of your training and later on survival and everything else. We're going to come back to HMTV here with Chief Master Sergeant Jack Brehm for part 2 of this segment of the Fog of War and Humanity. Please join us for this extremely, extremely interesting pararescue jumper and retired Suffolk County police officer.